Hello there. What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another guide video. At the time of recording, patch 7.6 is about a week old on the live servers, and we're taking a look at the new layer boss, the XR-53 Propagator Core in veteran mode. As always, we're going to start with our group composition. You'll need 2 people to do some tanking. However, the actual damage taken during this fight is quite low, but the DPS check is pretty high. So we're putting both of our tanks in full DPS gear to make sure we can keep up with those requirements. You could use just 1 tank and 1 DPS with taunt. However, there is a little bit of jeopardy that comes with that later in the fight, which I will talk about. So we're lining up with 4 DPS. Dot spreading classes could serve you well here. There will almost always be opportunity to spread to one of the target, and quite often 2. And bringing a blend of ranged and melee could also help you out in the long run. Space can sometimes get a little bit tight, and having people who can pop a target off without needing to stand in acid is useful. And we round our group off with 2 healers, making sure that they do as much off DPS as possible in the moments when raid health is good. Damage taken during this fight is manageable. If you have a particularly strong healer, you could definitely look to swap one out for another DPS just to help the DPS check. It is very much risk and reward. The first 2 mechanics I want to talk about go hand in hand. One is the digestive enzymes. This is the damage over time that you get whenever you stand in any form of acid across the arena. The more you stand in acid, the more stacks you get. The more stacks you get, the more damage you receive. These stacks are not cleansable by players and healers. Instead, you need to stand in the yellow AoE the boss does called Hungering Bite. Doing so will remove up to 10 stacks of the digestive enzyme. Next up, we're going to talk about the 2 common adds that you find throughout the fight. First of which is the Prey Seeker droid. This add will select a random raid member, usually a healer or a DPS. And this will be indicated with a red arrow chevron on the floor. It'll jump on that person and stun them in place. You won't be able to use any abilities while you're stunned, including stun break, so the only way to be freed is for your teammates to destroy the droid. If you get stunned into acid, you really need to be rescued out by a sage or a friendly harpoon and things like that. The second add is the Imperfect Construct. Again, this add will make its way to the raid group and then will cast an ability called Imperfect Explosion. It's a 15-second cast, at the end of which, if the droid is not destroyed, will leave a massive puddle of acid on the floor, roughly the same size as the red AoE that surrounds the droid. What your group will need to decide is how many of these droids do we want to destroy and lose DPS on in order to save space on the arena floor by not leaving acid pools, and probably more importantly, when do we want to do that? We're soon going to talk about the 3 key moments of high DPS in the fight. My suggestion would be to kill the droids in the approach to that DPS check so that you don't have restricted space for that moment. As for what the boss is up to, the first thing you'll come across is Lethal Strike. This is a short cast that the boss does on the person with highest threat. Once the cast is complete, he will jump on that person, putting out a lot of damage, and will apply a debuff called Softened Up. So you want to take a heavy defensive for that initial hit with the jump, but then the debuff does different things depending on what class the player with it is. When the tank has it, they take a little bit more damage and do reduce threat. If a DPS was to have it, their damage dealt would be massively reduced. I haven't seen a healer with it, but I'm going to assume that if they were to get it, that their healing would be massively reduced in a similar way. We basically treat this debuff as a tank swap mechanic. You definitely don't want to take a second big hit lethal strike when you already have the debuff. That's the key element here. So for the sake of speeding things up a little bit, I'm going to group these next 3 abilities under one heading. Basically, the red stuff. First is a red conal called Extraneous Explosion. This is going to go or target onto the main threat and will put a pool of acid underneath anybody that is caught along that red conal line, including the person that it targets. Next up, we've got an ability called Hunting Grounds. Boss is going to place 2 red AoE circles underneath a player. Normally it's the player furthest from him. Once that circle expires, it's going to leave a pool of acid on the floor. And then we've got Acidic Rocketry that's going to place 4 red AoE circles on 4 random raid members. These don't leave red acid, but they do damage, but they can be moved out of and avoided. And while all this is going on, the boss is preparing to carry out his prime directive, which is essentially to create a new construct out of your biomatter. Now, how this plays out in game is periodically he's going to do an ability called Prepare for Harvest. Each time he does it, he's going to build a stack, and also there'll be some vats in the back of the arena that will sort of gradually fill up with biomatter. So the boss is going to build up to 4 stacks, and then shortly after that is going to do a 10-second channeled ability called Prime Directive. Before the end of that cast, a player needs to go and stand inside the yellow circle, and for each rotation of Prime Directive, a different class needs to stand there. So tank, healer, DPS for each of the 3 occurrences that this takes place. And at the end of the cast, the boss is then going to bring in a construct, a stronger add, that's going to be essentially a clone of whatever class that you put it within that circle. So when you put the tank within the circle, the add spawns is called a defender construct. This one is going to shield the boss, make him immune from damage. When you put the DPS player in there, the rampaging construct spawns. That one there is going to do raid-wide AoE damage, but it is mobile. You can stack it under the boss and get some extra damage. When you put the healer within the circle, a supplicant construct will spawn. This one actually heals the boss, and so you need to interrupt the cast that it does, called supplication. One thing to note, the adds tend to spawn quite close to the red vats that are around the arena, so if you are looking to try and get some extra splash damage on the boss when he's not shielded by the tank add, having the boss near a vat when he does his prime directive cast can help that along. And what you don't want, particularly with the defender construct, the tank add, is for that to spawn into a pool of green acid where your melee DPS can't get to it. That's where we go back to the risk and reward of destroying the other adds, keeping an area clear for certain things. This is a key moment for that. So it's quite a lengthy intro. There's quite a lot going on. Let's see it in action. So just a couple of seconds in, we get our lethal strike, followed by all the different red stuff that we spoke about earlier. The group stays behind the boss to avoid getting caught in that red conal, and then it's up to them then to avoid all the smaller red circles. The first imperfect construct spawns in, and it's going to die to dot spread, and then after that we get the first yellow conal for cleansing.
Just a taste.
Boss now casts for his Prey Seeker droid. This one's the one that's going to stun a player. Really important that that player doesn't stand in acid, and also that we don't put the red conal over them and coat them in acid. Despite killing all the constructs so far, the middle of the arena is still starting to get a little bit cramped for space, so we're going to pull the boss, or start to bring the boss towards the outside of the arena, and we'll move him slowly around in a big circle. He can be a little bit stubborn. He doesn't move very fast, and he doesn't move when he's casting, and he casts quite a lot. So if you do find yourself getting a little bit cramped for space, find yourself little pockets, it's okay to build up a couple of stacks, but you don't want to stand in acid for a prolonged period. I've gone a little bit higher than I should here, and so I'm really thinking about this next cleansing conal, making sure that I get in it.
Oh, I didn't cleanse some.
More material required. Do not resist.
Right here, the boss is at 4 stacks of his harvest, and prime directive is going to come soon. We've created, by accident, this little pocket of space between these acid pools, and right behind my camera position is a vat, which is where the ad's going to spawn from. So we're going to keep the boss where he is now, and we're going to make sure that we keep this area clear of acid, moving any acid pools away, killing any ads that spawn, and this is where we're going to take our first prime directive ad.
Maceration.
I'm in, yeah,
Everyone else
I'm in.
out.
We've chosen to do the tank ad first, the defender ad, so I'm staying in for this cast.
Production complete.
Quite behind on that side.
But it's away from it.
Take in the main boss, so I get the next stack with my drop. Just communicating with my co-tank that I intend to take the next lethal strike from the boss. I can see my Colto packs are coming off of cooldown. I'm using the Super Commando implant with that to negate a lot of the big hit damage.
Production. Disgorging. Extraneous materials. More material required. Do not resist. Just a
Oh my god,
taste.
dude, just
Stop squirming.
it's all taken.
Yep, I got it.
I'd move him out of there.
At this point in this area, there's a lot of acid on the floor. We're going to try and tease the boss out of there and give our team some space.
Biomaterial reservoir 50%.
As you can see here, when those Prey Seeker droids come in, we are focusing them down with all the DPS that we have. We don't get the Construct droid destroyed here this time, and you can see the area of effect of acid as a result, but the Prey Seeker droid will always be the priority.
More material required. Do not resist. Just a taste.
And with the boss at 4 stacks of Harvest, we now need to get him out of this green, closer to a vat, ready for the next Prime Directive cast. I got it.
Stop squirming. Input required. Select
Healer in,
target
DPS
for
out.
maceration.
Okay, 54%. Are we ahead or behind? We're sending our healer in for this one, which will spawn the Supplicant droid. This is the one that heals the boss, so you have to interrupt its cast, and you'll hear us just communicating that throughout this phase.
Interrupted.
Shot.
I'll pick next.
Yep, I'll go after you. Okay, Reese next.
Material biocompatibility verified. Resuming droid production.
It's very much repeating this as you work your way around the arena now, so I'll speed up the footage a little bit and I will come back when we do our third and final Prime Directive.
Required. Do not resist. Just a taste. Biomaterial reservoir 25%. Biomaterial reservoir 50%. Resist ready.
I think we just get out of check.
More material required. Do not resist. Disgorging extraneous materials. Stop sweating. Just a taste.
So the boss is up 4 stacks of Harvest. We've moved him around to the next vat and we've kept the area reasonably clear of acid. We're now lining up for Prime Directive 3, which is going to be the DPS going in. And with this one, this ad does do damage, so defensive, but he is mobile, so we will stack him under the boss and just squeeze some extra DPS out of this section.
If you can dot squid on boss, he is taking damage doing this.
Oh yes. You can pull him to the boss too.
Yeah, just notice that this time. I know we don't have much time.
Ah, that was huge though.
Material biocompatibility verified. Resuming droid.
We've now used all 3 of our available classes, tank, healer and DPS. If he does another 4 stacks of harvest followed by a prime directive, we're going to slip into a hard enrage where he's going to start putting out massive damage. It's not impossible to fight through for a few seconds, but it pretty much is going to be the end of it if we're not super close at that point. We're well on track for a nice comfortable kill here.
Biomaterial reservoir, 25%. Biomaterial reservoir, 50%.
And there we have it guys, another boss dead on the floor. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video has been fun and informative, and I hope it helps you get your kill in the new layer boss XR-53. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, share and all that good stuff. And for me, it's good hunting, and I'll catch you on the next one. I'm out.